busy with like the Foxhole update. But once we do get around to like analyzing it, it'll be a huge help. So really, like, thanks again. Like,
it was amazing.
You know, we're glad you guys were able to have hopefully at least somewhat of like a fun experience. But it shows the potential about what can happen in the future, right? And I think our goal has always been from the first day since we started talking about like Foxhole is to try to get as many players as we can into the same world. And I think this is a huge step for us at Clapfoot, and I think the future is bright.
Yeah, it's very nice. It's a very big difference for us to try to test it on a real, because we tested before with like bots in-house. We are 14 people on our team right now, which is not nearly enough for the 1,000 tests. We did test in-house with bots and with some other like very close group, like on a very close test, a very small amount of people. It's not the same as having like literally thousands of people, each person connecting from everywhere in the world. So that's why we decided to open this test. Sure, it was not as polished as it could be, and there was some still, rough edges, but it was very important for the test so we can get enough information about how the platform is going.
Yeah,
so thank you very much. Yeah, it was amazing.
Also, for whatever it was worth, it was really fun to work on. I don't know about UHB, but
it was a lot of fun. Like we had to do some like historical like animations and everything. It was awesome.
HB and I had so many conversations about how muskets work. It was like great detail. It was
that musket animation reload was one of the longest animations, like research animations that I had to do for this game ever.
It was probably the hardest.
Anyway, we have to
move on.
So much stuff to do. Let's move on.
Cool. Let's get started, Mark. It's all you, so take it away.
Great. So I'm going to try to get through a lot of this as fast as I can. And there's just so much to talk to that there's going to be a lot of small details that are not going to be on the stream, and we're just going to have to let you guys know through the Reddit, through chat, and just over the next week, definitely through the dev branch. But basically,
there's also actually, just to that point, there's also like a lot of small stuff that probably won't get announced at all, and you'll probably just have to skim the patch.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what to put in the slides, and there was a lot that I was just like, it's just too much here. But the update is coming officially on December 11th, next Wednesday, and the dev branch is coming out tomorrow. So it will be a bit under a week in the dev branch, which is a bit longer than our usual one, but there's a lot of content here, so it is going to be longer. Yeah, let's just get right to it. A couple of small balance and quality of life things I just wanted to highlight really quickly. There's more than this, but just a few things I thought might be interesting to start with. For squads, we did want to make sure that we were following up on this feature and want to sneak in at least a few quality of life changes here. The squad window can be minimized now. And also the squad list is going to be sorted between the online and the offline squads. Right now, it is kind of confusing. You log in, you see all these squads, you see like a number beside, but you don't quite know which ones are online, which ones are offline. So hopefully this one is going to help a lot. And we're also going to be continuing to look at more of this. So this is not the end. I think squads system still has like a whole lot of work to be done. But this was mostly all we could do for this update. But expect to see more work there in the future. The economy, there's a couple of changes. We took a look at, the new content in the game, and, we expect in the coming weeks, there is going to be a scale up in the number of players. And we went back to look at the economy again and want to make sure that it was correctly tuned. So one thing that we are looking into is scaling the output of the mines based on the player population, so that, because one of the biggest feedback that we've gotten is, hey, like sometimes you log on and you just happen to log on at the wrong time, and you don't have any components to make what you want to make. This doesn't solve that completely, but it should help a lot. If there's more players around, there should be more components and software to go around in general, and petrol as well. And also the amount of component and software fields is going to be going from 6, the respawn time is going to be every 6 hours instead of every 8 hours, which is about a 33% increase. Yep. Which is quite a lot, actually. So this should also be helping with the scarcity issue as well. So these are just a few small things I wanted to highlight. There's definitely more, but again, you'll see those come in the release notes. Yeah, so moving on, home region redesign. Matt, do you want to discuss this for like 2 minutes?
Yeah, we'll talk about it for a second. We wanted to, I think I want to take a step back and talk about a long time ago. We showed some concept art for what might have been like home regions a long time ago. A long time ago, I said twice in the same sentence. And that turned out to be like nothing we really designed we were really, really happy with. I think that's like fair to say. And so when we were coming around to this update, we really wanted to make it so that it's not just a cramped space. I think one of the biggest problems with the home region right now is like you just spawn in a pile of players spewing loud music and guns go. It's just like chaos, and it just we wanted to sort of organize that chaos a bit so you can still have that chaos, but at least you're not spawning into it when you just want to run and play the game. With that also, there's a lot more iconography on the map. So when you open the map, it'll tell you where to go. It'll tell you where everything is. There's a lot more direction for players and far more large areas to deploy from. So you will deploy actually from anywhere near the hangars or the docks that are also in this area. It's these huge areas. It's not a little tent, so you don't have to like cram beside a bunch of people to try to deploy. It's a pretty simple layout, even though it looks really complicated, and it should be very easy to get around.
And one of the things that we did, Matt, was to make sure that when there aren't a lot of players are spawning in the same area to make sure that when you're a new player or you're spawning in, you do see others. But as the amount of players increases in the home region, the spawn points, the other spawn points start to like open up. So there's actually, I think, is there like 10 or 12? I don't remember. But
different locations.
Yeah, there's like
there's 12.
There's 12 different spawn points, so that at the start of the war, as an example, when there's literally 100 people in there or more, they will all start spawning at different locations. So everyone's not cramped in one single place, right? So hopefully that will help a bit. And one of the other plans that we have that we still haven't gone around to yet, that was a part of this, but it's something we decided to like defer, was that we wanted to connect. One of the reasons why we want more players in these home regions, so that we can have a single home region for each side, and we can have them be actually a part of the persistent world. So you can travel from them into the main world. You can just go and ride a boat and travel them over to the main world. But that's not going to be ready yet for this update. So
yeah, but that's an exciting addition, and we are set up for that as like from on the map side. It's just a matter of getting it all wired up and testing it. And so I would expect at some point for that to to arrive.
Sorry, I didn't mean to rush you.
No, this is cool though. I'm actually more excited about this.
So the item changes, basically there's a couple of things we're changing with regards to the item system. First of all is the large item class. We kind of talked about this last week with the deployable weapons, which was the first sort of large item class that we introduced to you guys. But basically this is a new class of item that is used for large items that we deem to be realistically too large
for you to put
or
in
bulky
your backpack.
for you to put in your backpack. Now I know there's other things that are large and not practical in your backpack that you can, like your B-mats, but right now we're sort of just doing this for specific items. There's a couple of special things about these items. You can only carry one at a time, and when you're carrying these items, you can't be using a weapon or anything else. You just have to be carrying it. If you enter a vehicle or you mount another weapon, you will drop a large item. And some of the examples of the large items we're going to have at the beginning in the next 2 updates is going to be the deployable weapons, the critically wounded soldiers, which we'll talk about it a bit, and shells for very large artillery weapons, which we'll also talk about later.
No longer are you putting them in your pocket.
Yes.
So this is all part of like the idea that having visible equipment. So that also ties in with all these things that before were like med kits and grenades and satchel charges and things like that, and fuel that you would carry in general. Now we want to showcase that you have them. I think this is the first step for showcasing the equipment that you have, that you're carrying, and we're gonna start with these. Like I think all of them are like the 2 types of fuel, med kits, trauma kits, and things like that. Satchel charges, grenades, all kinds of grenades. They're all visible as well on your hand. So they should be much harder for people to just sneak in something. You see them. They can still switch weapons, of course, but also it's very clear now if you're carrying a med kit, that you will be shooting a medic. So I think that's a pretty cool thing as well.
Yeah. Because who shoots medics, right?
I know, right?
Scum of the earth.
I didn't know anything about when this was going to be implemented. I had only known that we were working on it. And at some point while I was working on my own stuff, like my character just started carrying stuff. And I was like, whoa, this is like, it felt game changing.
It's weird because it's one of those small things that makes such a huge difference in like the immersion, right? Just being able to see a player, even when you're, one of the small things is that if you're carrying a can of fuel, you see the player holding that can of fuel now, which is really, really cool. Right?
To be honest, my favorite is when you have HE grenades equipped.
Yeah.
That you see the HE grenades equipped in your hand. So you, even as an enemy, you can prepare, right? You cannot just simply like sneak attack a grenade.
Yeah. At least it's a little bit.
A little bit more. Yeah, like you can still switch weapons quickly, whatever. But like that is the first step. I think it's pretty nice.
Cool. And moving on, medical expansion. So we knew we were doing the base building update, but we also have a long time wanted to revisit some of the medical features in the game. I'm really excited that we got to this. This isn't necessarily a big feature that a lot of players have been like calling for, unlike like the base building, everybody's been asking for it. But medical stuff is important to us. We always want to make sure that the combat is not the only focus of the game, and that all of these other roles are getting as much focus and attention, because Foxhole is always about the feeling of being in a war. And not necessarily about like shooting people, right? So it's very important that this is a huge part of the game, just like how logistics is a huge part of the game, right? Huge part of war. Like the medical side of war was huge as well, right? So first of all, we're going to be adding essentially ammo for medical equipment. First aid kits will consume bandages, and blood plasma will be required for your trauma kits. And basically, what we want to do is, our goal wasn't to be like, let's make Logi do more work, which always seems like the thing that tends to happen. But our goal was not that. We didn't want to increase the logistical requirements, but rather we wanted to make sure that the med kit and the trauma kit weren't these magical items, kind of like what the gas mask was before. It was just a magical thing that it worked like 100%, right? And like you never have to worry about it. In the same way, we just wanted to make sure that there was a limit and you could like run out. And I actually think that a lot of players were asking for this for, since like more than a year ago. They're like, why is, there should be a limit. But having said that, we didn't want to increase the logistical requirements. So we basically are saying that the crates can just hold a whole bunch of these. So we're not adding extra like burden. You just sort of like throw one of these crates in your Logi run, and you should, in theory, it's not going to be a lot more than before, right? And obviously these like numbers are going to be like subject to change.
Plus there's another thing that might help balance this out that you're going to talk about.
Yes. So there's another thing coming that is going to significantly decrease logistics, right? Yeah. Which is really cool. It'd be like medics get to help out with Logi in a way.
Yeah.
Sorry, medics.
We're pushing the logics into the medics.
So ambulances and carrying wounded. So this is a few parts here. I'm going to try to break it down as much as I can, and then we're probably going to have to explain it later because it isn't entirely clear cut. But basically, for players that are wounded, the timer has been extended to 30 seconds now. But we know it'll be annoying if you have to wait there for 30 seconds. So after the old like 10 seconds, roughly 10 seconds previously, you can press E if you just want to respawn, right? Yeah. So this way it'll give more opportunities for the medics in the game to be able to save more players, right? and wounded players can be carried to safety. So this one is interesting because we did a prototype and we wanted to get it in for this update, but there was just too much happening
Yeah.
in all the other areas of the game that we decided a few days ago that it's just going to be like too much for this update. But there's a prototype, it works. It's just a matter of fixing the bugs and making it work in all the different like corner cases.
Yeah.
But we definitely want to get that in there for the next update. And as I'll talk about at the end, and I think that I also mentioned this in the blog, is that this trench warfare update was so big, we have to split it up. So it's actually going to span both the December update, December 11th, and in January there's going to be like a follow update because there's just too much content, right? So the other part of this was the critically wounded soldiers. So this one was not quite as difficult, right? But this is basically being able to recover an incapacitated soldier. So what happens here, I'll walk through here a bit. When a soldier is killed and their wounded timer expires, there's a chance they'll turn into a critically wounded soldier. So this is sort of a next step past like the wounded state, right?
So just to clarify,
Yes.
when you are a critically wounded soldier, you're not technically a player anymore.
You're not a player anymore. So you've already left the body, so to say. You've respawned, but this turns into
But your previous body
your
stays
previous
where
body
you
has
were.
a chance of staying there as a critically wounded soldier.
Let's just make it really controversial. You become a resource.
Nervous laughter. So so I'll explain this, but basically these left behind critically wounded soldiers can be carried to an ambulance, right? And then furthermore, they can be carried to a hospital, right? And on top of that, to take a step back for 1 second, the ambulances themselves is going to serve as a utility vehicle for
medical
medics,
equipment.
and they'll be able to stack all of your medical equipment and supplies, right? So stepping forward to further expand on the critically wounded soldier mechanic, well, before I do that, you can sort of see the two different parts of this if you want to. I don't know if there's much to say, HB, but
I think
oh, is it?
it might be
Maybe we have it. Maybe oh yeah, it is reversed.
Sorry,
that was my bad.
the gifts are inverted. The gift on the right side there, that's actually the critically wounded. So
Yes.
that means that like you pick them up. That's a non-player anymore. Technically, it would be equivalent of carrying any other item, right? And you can bring this critically wounded soldier back to a hospital, and then you can recover a soldier supply.
which I'll
from that.
explain in a bit.
Yeah. The wounded soldiers, which is actually the gift on the left, it's still a live player, and this would be just a manner for you to carry a player that has been down but is not dead yet. You carry him to safety so you can save their life by using a trauma kit.
Yeah, so it's sort of like a slow wounds, but you can move them.
Yeah, the difference is that, well, first of all, the one on the left, called Wounded Soldier, actually,
Yeah.
the gift on the left, but right up on the right. That's the one that is not in the game yet. It's going to be coming up on January.
Yes.
The Critically Wounded Soldiers gameplay, because it's actually a more complex gameplay in several aspects, is the one coming up right now.
Yeah. Cool. And that brings us to the hospitals. This is where you bring your critically wounded soldiers to recover. And this is where that logi aspect, in a way, spills over into the medic role. But basically, when you bring critically wounded soldiers to a hospital, you can submit them for recovery. Once they're recovered, they convert back into soldier supplies. Hospitals have a limited number of beds, so it can only receive a certain number of patients at the same time, and patients will take time. So it's not like you can come there with a resource with your critically wounded soldiers and expect to trade them in for soldier supplies. They actually have to take time to recover. So it's a bit of a longer term sort of way to recycle back your soldier supplies, right? And what this does is essentially it can alleviate logistics of the front line, because it allows soldier supplies to effectively produce at the front if you manage your medical lines properly, if you build your field hospitals, if you have a town hospital. So that brings us to the hospital types. There's a field hospital. Player build can build these basically anywhere. Build at the front, build it close to your fob, do anything. And then you have your town hospitals, which only exist in towns, and these have like a lot more beds. So if you're under siege of the town and you're running out of soldier supplies, this may be something that could save you, right? So.
For the sake of argument, let's just assume that these soldiers are being treated and then sent home, and their supplies are being reused.
Yes. What we're doing is actually allowing other players to take the place of what would be this supply.
Yes.
So we are just that's why you're actually recovering the players, because since this is a game, we have to we already have the gameplay aspect of respawning. Respawning is making sure that you recover and coming back. Is that in this case you're using that? That's why you're recovering a player. We're not harvesting organs in here.
Sent home.
No, we're actually mutating these corpses into shirts.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what we're doing. I don't know what you're talking about.
Turning biological material
into literal fabric.
Into
shirts.
literal fabric. Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
All right.
Cool. Let's move on from that. Here's the hospital, the town hospital, and the roof comes off. It's pretty cool. Looks cool.
It's a cool little structure. You guys have some of you have actually already seen kind of one of these because it was found a while ago. We placed one of these in Deadlands.
Cool. If you want to play that quick video, Matt.
Yep. So this is just demonstrating how some of this stuff works. So you guys can see it. I think this might have sound. I'm not really sure. Yeah, it looks like it does. I don't know if they can hear it or not, but whatever.
Is there narration in the video?
No. It's just the sound of the game.
Oh, okay.
So there's the hospital screen where you can see all the beds, and when you submit a soldier, this is obviously sped up, but you can see it takes time for that patient to recover. And once it's recovered, then you get your soldier supplies back. It's not going to be that fast, just to be super clear. Cool. All right, moving on.
What is next? Oh,
new
shit.
machine guns, right? So 3 new machine guns.
Yeah.
And the old one's gone, just to be clear. So basically, we wanted to, I think Julian designed these new machine guns can't even imagine how long ago, maybe half a year ago or something.
So
and
glad.
We're finally glad that they're in. And there's going to be 3 types. First of all, we want to improve the overall visual experience and the audio experience. And Matt has spent a lot of time on the new sound effects, which I think you're going to find pretty cool. I think even the submachine gun has a new sound effect too, so this spilled over into that as well.
Yeah,
right?
I think the only things that didn't get updated were, the storm rifle didn't either. So a lot of stuff didn't get updated, but a lot of weapons got updated. The machine guns, the SMG. There was a lot of random sounds too.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Cool. So first we have the light machine gun. It can be fired while standing. It's less accurate, smaller clip size than the other machine gun. But finally, we have a light machine gun that you can use while standing. We have the standard machine gun, which is basically equivalent to the old machine gun, the
Old heavy machine gun.
old heavy machine gun, the yellow box.
Yeah, you can see there's some similarities on the looks of it.
That old machine gun was originally ripped from Fortified.
Yeah.
And then we remodeled it kind of. It's so old. It's so old.
Yeah. And then finally, we have the deployable heavy machine gun, which is capable of long distance indirect fire. This is going to be really cool. So this weapon is actually not coming until the January update because there's still more work to be done on it. But essentially, you're going to be able to fire it over a hill, right? So this was a real thing. We actually there's actually some really cool reference videos on this. We should show them at some point. But essentially, you'll be able to like fire it in an arc, like over a hill. So that should be pretty cool. It does require a tripod, and it is a deployable, so it's a 2-man job. So you sort of need a team to be using that one. So here's the LMG and the MG in action. I think some of the tracers you touched on too slightly. Matt,
yeah,
right?
you should know if what someone's firing at you now a little bit more clearly.
Yeah.
What kind of weapon anyway?
Cool. I feel like we should take a break or something, but
It's a lot going on.
Intermission.
Fuck it, let's keep going.
just keep going. Okay.
No rest for the wicked.
Relic bases. This is really cool. So, we talked about this, Matt, like back in September, that we were gonna replace the forts, and basically,
You know what? Just to like preface that, like we were originally like, okay, let's replace the forts, but then we weren't ready yet, so we just moved the forts. This was supposed to come back then, right?
Yeah.
And then Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the things that we really wanted to do back in September, when we sort of wanted to test some of the gameplay first, before putting like the visuals and like the new features in. So we put those old forts in, but one of the things that we always felt was that the theming of those forts were kind of off. I mean, the theming was right for what we wanted at the very beginning, but then the use of it changed so many times that eventually that theming didn't make sense. I think a lot of you guys even said, you're like, it doesn't even make sense. Why is there this weird like castle thing, right?
They weren't originally supposed to be placed very frequently. And
Yeah. So this is one of those cases where we were just kind of like, hey, you guys gotta like trust us. We're gonna make it better. This is us coming back to make it better. There's gonna be 3 different variations, and it has some cool features. It has like an interior, so you can spawn from the inside. There is AI defenses on them, and you can mount these points. As you can see, there's 3 of them. These sort of like these are armored like bunker points. So if you want to make a last stand at one of these forts, that should be a bit more helpful. It's a little bit like a safe house in a way, but it is a standalone base. It doesn't require to be next to a town or anything. Right?
So to talk about this for a second, previously we had forts. Forts were just points that you could use as a stockpile and capture, and they would help you move forward. Now those are all replaced 100%. There are no more forts in the game by relic bases. So each one of those positions now has these fortified bases for you to use on your way to the next town or the next position that you want to capture. So it's no longer just like this random spot. It's kind of actually got a purpose. And I think that's the exciting part.
Yes. And here's another cool image showing off the interior, which Anthony and Leon spent a lot of time on these interiors. And I think they're kind of cool, actually. It's kind of rare that we get these really like detailed props on the inside structures. It's something we started doing in the town update last year, Matt. And
Wait, did you just say Anthony did the interiors?
Oh,
No, I did the interiors.
no, but he modeled the.
Oh yeah, okay. I was like, wait a second. Yeah,
no,
yeah,
man, I'm not stealing your thunder. Don't worry. But
and Leon also helped work on this too.
yeah, it's really cool. Like
It's
seeing
a lot of collaboration.
seeing some of like what we did in the town revamp last year when we started adding the detail to the interiors, and then now that's spilling over into like all these other parts of the game, right? Sort of like the standard keeps going up, and then that standard gets spilled into like the rest of the game. So
Hopefully.
yeah. This is another one of this is the smallest variation, I think. Right?
No, the first one's the smallest.
Oh, the first
variation.
one's the smallest. Okay.
Yeah,
This is like the medium one.
Yeah, this is the medium-sized one, and then there's about an equal amount between the first and the second. So 1 and 2. This is 2. The first one we showed is 1. 3 is that big one. There'll be less of those because they're clearly, bigger.
Cool.
So.
All right, base building details. This is finally getting into the meat of this trench warfare.
What
stuff.
you all came for.
What you all came for. So, first of all, we'll start off by saying all the walls have been redone with the new system. There will be full snapping for walls. We also threw in the curved sandbags, and the sandbags will also be snappable as well. And this is really cool because the gates, we sort of we took a page from how we did the crane with the gate doors, which whenever we have something that's really like intrusive in the world, like the crane or like the gate, now we have this method where we just let it clip through. And even though visually, you know, some people might say, well, it's kind of weird, but it actually solves a lot of problems in like gameplay because you don't have this weird thing that moves like up and down. It makes more like physical sense too. So I think overall this should be, you know, for all the builders out there, you know, again, this is all going to be fresh stuff for you guys now, right? Moving on, so some new mechanics that are tied into the bunker and trench system. First of all is the concrete material. So this is something we kind of talked about in the blog. Basically, to construct third tier trenches and bunkers, you need and walls. You need the concrete material resource, and this is made using a refinery, a mobile refinery actually, called the concrete mixer. And basically this is a mobile refinery that you build at a construction yard and you ship it to the front. And once it's there, you can bring your components straight from component fields or mines straight to the refinery without having to go to a town. So you can sort of like, we sort of separated the workflow a little bit there for this one. And once you get it there, there is a concrete settling period. So once you build one of these structures with your concrete materials, it does take many hours for it to settle. And while it's settling, the structure's health will be less, right? So it'll be a lot more frail and like vulnerable during that period. But once it's fully settled, then it'll be at full strength. And one of the reasons why we want to do this is because we don't want these heavily fortified structures to be spammed and to be used as like an offensive weapon. We want people to be more encouraged to use this in the back line, what makes sense in a real war. You don't go right up to the front line and plop down some like concrete walls. It just makes no sense, right? You usually use that when you're trying to fortify a position that you already have, right? Moving on to...
There's so much. I kind of forgot.
Modular bunker system. So we talked about this a bit last week, but there's a lot more to it. Basically, we wanted players with the system to be able to make their own bunker types. We didn't want to say, here's your bunker, that's it, you got to use it. We want you to be able to make your own. And when we say you can make your own, we really wanted it to feel that way. So it wasn't just a bunch of pieces you were like attaching together. But how it works is you can combine these segments to form a monolithic structure. And basically these monolithic structures will share a health pool, right? So if you build like four bunker pieces, it'll take the health of all four of those bunker pieces and it'll combine it, right? So basically if you want to take down that bunker now, you're contending with the sum of the health pool, right? So this will essentially allow players to build, their own form of AI defenses. If you want to build something that's a hybrid that between like an AI defense and a normal like rifle defense, you can build those into the same bunker. They will share a health pool, and they'll be much harder to take down after that point, right? So we really want to get this feeling of like you're building your own base, right? But there is a trade-off, because we don't want people to just be like, hey, the optimal strategy is to just make this thing as
gigantic bunker.
Huge bunker. So there's like a structural integrity mechanic, and basically your structural integrity will go down with each segment that you add. So we'll let players figure out what the optimal point for them is. So basically you can add to your bunker, which adds more hit points, but there's an overall structural integrity factor that is going to lower, and this is going to be unique on every structure type. So you sort of have to figure out the combinations of structures that gives you the optimal trade-off that you want. And every situation is going to be different because you might not necessarily be able to build the biggest thing in a certain place. You don't know what structures you need. So we sort of wanted there to be an interesting trade-off when you're making these buildings. So it's not just every single time spam the largest thing possible. We wanted you guys to figure out sort of what the optimal point is, right? So
what does structural integrity like affect?
it basically it's a factor in determining the final health calculation of that structure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's not a simple add.
Yeah, so you're adding more, but the more you add, the overall multiplier starts to go down. But the multiplier is not the same for every structure. It can be different, right? So if you want to add, like, let's say there's a new building that we, like, if you want to add an engine room, that might lower structural integrity more than some other structure. So you sort of up to players to figure out how to optimize, right? And the good thing is you can use trenches to bridge the bunker islands, and that won't add to your structural integrity. So the optimal solution will probably look like a bunch of these like islands that are connected by your trenches, right? But again, this is something we want players to kind of like figure out, right? So moving on, engine room and pipes, right? So this is something we hinted at last week. So basically the engine room is going to be a bunker structure. It's a structure that you build in your bunker, and it generates power for nearby structures like the bunker garrison, so any of like the AI defenses that we've shown, and the storm cannon, which we'll talk about a couple of slides later, which is really cool. And definitely future content. This is going to be a huge feature in the game that is going to be useful in a lot of future content. So these structures some structures will require only a single engine room to power. Some of them will require multiple engine rooms. And engine rooms can't actually be built right beside each other. So players have to figure out, again, how to like optimize, right? So what we want to do is we want to give you all these tools, but then it's not a simple problem. You have to kind of like at least put some thought into how to figure out what the optimal base is, right? And the pipes. So that's how you get your power from your engine room to your actual structures, right? So this is the pipes can be installed into the ground beneath any bunker or trench. And basically it establishes the connections between the structures that need power and the engine room, right? And it's built like any other modification in the game. So it just works harmoniously with the modification system that we showed last week. You can hold down, so these pipes aren't always visible like this. You have to hold down the key to be able to see them, because we obviously didn't want it to be like annoying where you can see the pipes all the time when you're trying to fight. So normally they'll be hidden, but it's kind of like SimCity mechanic when you look under the ground for the pipes, right? Here is what the initial structures that we want to have, the 3 garrison types, the engine room, and not all of them will span all the tiers. So you can see like certain structures here only exist on 2nd and 3rd tier, like the AT gun garrison, and the power requirements for the AT gun garrison is going to be different than the other 2 structures, right?
Yep.
Seems like a lot.
It is a lot.
All right, here's all the modifications that we're going to also have. So these were the modifications is these sort of substructures you can build into existing trenches and forts, which we showed off last week. I think we already showed off the firing port, which lets you shoot from inside a bunker. There's a doorway, which allows you to walk into a bunker. There is the barbed wire, which makes it harder for the enemy to try to jump into your trench. Excuse me. There's a bridge, lets vehicles pass over, and then finally there are the pipes, which are actually supported on all tiers, even though I missed that square over there. So that's all the modifications. We actually don't have a video here. This slide was left over, so we'll just pass on to the next thing. But the one thing I do want to talk about is going back to the beginning. Our goal was that we really wanted players to be able to take a look at some of these historical fortification walls, kind of like the Maginot Line or like the Atlantic Wall, and be like, hey, how can I build this like crazy system, right? This crazy wall of like trenches and like bunkers and like, you know, whole bunch of stuff, right? And this was the goal that we had from the start. And we're hoping that in the winter update, this will be the first part of that, right? And to talk about the final sort of like the icing on the cake that helps to fulfill that goal is the storm cannon, right?
You ready?
So yeah. So the storm cannon. No, not the video, Matt.
Oh, sorry. I got so confused because your previous thing said video, and then you switched. My bad.
Matt, we know these things are never perfect.
Yeah. Well, they got a tease. They got a little tease.
Yeah. So basically, a storm cannon is a mountain goal weapon. It is I would argue the second super weapon in the game next to rockets, but this one is player driven this time. It's not fixed in the world, right? So requires an immense amount of effort and manpower if you want to make one of these things happen. First of all, it requires a 3x3 monolithic concrete bunker, right? It needs to be charged with power over time, and this is very, very slow, right? And if you want to even go at a reasonable speed where you don't have to wait years for it, you probably want to connect the maximum amount of engine rooms to it, which is 10, right? Both aiming and firing it will consume power, right? So it's not something you can just, because this thing is so powerful, we didn't want it to be like the howitzer where you can just point and shoot it anywhere you want, right? It's even like just to change your target is going to require power, right? So this is something that you're gonna have to figure out how you can actually build so many engine rooms and how you can actually make this happen. A loading chamber facility that's very expensive is required. So if you want to try to build this at the front line with the facility efficiency mechanic, try your best, but I don't think you'll be able to. So it's more of like a backline weapon. It's really only cost effective to build a backline. So if the enemy, one side's winning, this is like something that they have to try to get through, right? And another reason why we want to have this in the game was, what's the use in building and spending like 2 weeks in making this really nice base if no one has to attack it? Well, guess what? You're forced to attack this nice base now, because if you want to take over a region, it's going to be very hard to do it if the enemy has one of these in it, right? So now players are forced to like attack these super fortresses that players have been spending all this time making, right? This was sort of like one of like the major goals here, right? So it's like player content, and then players have to fight that content. You know, that was our goal. Firepower, 300mm rounds. This is where the large item comes into place. So even if you just to like reload this, someone has to go to the stockpile, go and grab one of these 300mm rounds, have it over their shoulder, walk over to the cannon, and then load it manually, right? So it can't just, you don't just spam a bunch of them in there and you're done, right? So, yeah. So firing distance, this is we're still figuring out the final numbers, but it's going to be in the order of like fire across like half a region, you know, maybe more, right? So
if you put it in the right spot,
if you put it in the right spot, you can fire anywhere.
you can pretty much
right?
fire anywhere.
Yeah. So I think
with that,
this is the screenshot though of what this looks like when it's built into one of your trench bases. And yeah, if you want to show the video.
Now I can show the video.
Finally.
All right, let's. This is very cool.
This is very big.
It's a very, very big boy. I think for a really long time, I've just been calling this the big boy cannon. Until we gave it a name. It was very loud, apparently.
It's pretty cool.
So we could just let this play if there's anything else you want to sort of say about
No,
it.
I mean, I think that's sort of, I think that's kind of it. But there's a bit, yeah, we can stop that now. Cool. So I did want to show this because it's very important that we get you guys on the same page about what's happening now, what's happening in January, because like I said, this trench warfare update has been so big, so many things have been going into it that we couldn't get it all done. So some of it's going to be broken off into January. Most of what you saw is coming next Wednesday. And then there's a couple of things like carrying wounded soldiers, that's the live soldiers, right? The machine gun garrison, which was one of the bunker structures that we showed, and the infantry support gun that we showed last week, the heavy machine gun, that stuff, unfortunately, we did have to push it to January, but I think there's more than enough in this update. If you argue otherwise, I don't know what to say. And definitely there is more cool bunker and trench stuff that we were really excited to get in that didn't quite make it, and we're gonna have more to say about those in the coming week, because trust me, there's some really other cool stuff that we just, still happening there, right?
Yep.
So much cool stuff. All right, we're going to ask only a couple questions because we have all this cool stuff to finish. So... It was very loud, apparently.
It's pretty cool.
So we could just let this play if there's anything